turtles, tortoises, and terrapins. Oh my! Hello friends, I'm Eric Brittingham, otherwise known as Mr. B from Wildlife on the Move, and welcome to Let's Go Wild. On today's episode, we are featuring our turtles, tortoises, and terrapins. Oh my! It's going to be a great day talking about these awesome shelled reptilians. And so we want to kind of talk today about their similarities and differences. What is a turtle? What is a tortoise? What is a terrapin? It gets pretty confusing. It's kind of like tomato, tomato, potato, potato. So let's start off just by looking at this shell and talking about turtles for a moment as we're checking out Hatari, the African spur tortoise, eat, and his little buddy Ritalin, the box turtle, which we'll get to in just a moment. But let's look at this turtle shell for a moment. This is actually a red-eared slider shell. I found this many years ago down by the side of a creek. It actually was dead, and there was a raccoon eating what was left of this. And so I cleaned it up and got it all polished and everything so you guys can see. I don't know if I can angle it down enough there, but there is actually a backbone inside of that shell. So turtles and tortoises are actually attached to their shell. Terrapins too. So what makes a turtle, a tortoise, or a terrapin? Well, let's talk about the differences. Turtles actually live in the water, in and around water, and they have webbed feet, all right? Terrapins actually are turtles as well, but they're more specific to brackish waters, like salt and freshwater mixed, and that's why they're called a terrapin. It's actually a colloquial term that people coined many, many years ago when the settlers came over, and it's an English term that stuck for some turtles. Some people prefer to call them terrapins. So there are some terrapins in our world. But this is a red-eared slider. Most of your turtles are going to have a very sleek, smooth shell, and that helps keep resistance down when they're swimming. They don't want anything to get caught, and so that's why this is a turtle. And of course, as I said, they'd have webbed feet, whereas our sea turtles would have flippers. And so that's a whole nother group of turtles as well out there, the sea turtle. Now, this little animal is very common, has a little red stripe on the side of its head, the red-eared slider, and most turtles are going to have this sleek design and the webbed feet. Now, as we move on into tortoises, what's really interesting is this little guy, Ritalin, is actually called a three-toed box turtle. 1, 2, 3 toes. 1, 2, 3 toes on their back feet. He has a cousin actually called the ornate box turtle. The ornate box turtle actually has little dots and stripes on its shell. It looks like an Easter egg or a Christmas ornament. And they actually have 4 toes on their back feet, and so that's how you can differentiate those guys in Texas as well as other places in the United States. So why is this guy a turtle and not a tortoise? Well, he actually is classified in all 3 categories by many people. A turtle, a tortoise, and a terrapin. But he really, truly is a land-dwelling turtle. You know, all tortoises are turtles, but they're specific and specialized because they have claws on their feet and they're designed to live on land. The reason this guy is still classified as a turtle is he actually can soak in water, so he lives around ponds and streams, but is also up on land. And he goes after insects as well as plants, so he's more of an omnivore, and that's typically your turtles as well. They're omnivores, whereas your tortoises tend to be herbivores only. They eat plants and fruit, and this particular guy, the African spur tortoise, which we'll talk about in a moment, eats cactus, thorns and all. So this guy, he does have the claws on the ends of his feet, and he has no webbed feet, and he has the high-rise shell, and so that's why he's more tortoise-like. Plus, he lives on land, but does live in and around water just to soak on occasion, but he cannot swim. Now, let's talk about the shell. The top shell is actually called the carapace, and the bottom shell is called the plastron. Now, these box turtles, they're called a box turtle because of the fact that they can close themselves up as tight as a box. That's the other thing about certain turtles, that they have the ability to close themselves up to protect themselves, and that's what that shell is good for, is protecting themselves. It's made out of the same thing as your fingernails, all right? So it will grow his whole life, and he is attached to it by a backbone. So yes, they can actually poke their head inside their shell and tuck their legs, and they have a little hinge right here on the front and also on the back. and that's why they're called a box turtle. They close up as tight as a box. Hence why turtles and tortoises have these shells. They're really designed to protect them. And really importantly, as we segue into the tortoise, that's mainly why they have their shell, is for protection. So this guy is actually from Africa. He is an African spurred tortoise, and he is actually the third largest tortoise species in the world. We have the largest being the Galapagos tortoise, which we want you to do some research about and learn more about the Galapagos tortoise, as well as the Aldabra tortoise being the second largest species of tortoise in the world, and the spurred tortoise is the third largest tortoise species in the world. As you can see, he's munching on plants. We got some tomatoes there as well as some lettuce. So they love to eat plants, and this particular species eats cactus, thorns and all, there in Africa. Get most of their water from what they eat. Now, his name is Hatari, and in other episodes we've talked a little bit about Swahili, and so his Swahili name means danger. So is he dangerous up here? Well, that's what a lot of people think, but he doesn't have any teeth. He actually has a beak that you notice there that he's eating and chewing with, and so that helps him eat. But what he's really dangerous on is on the back side of his body, he actually has spurs. And I'm going to try to lift him up here. He's pretty heavy. He's about 15 pounds. So I want to point out back here, he has these spurs right here. They're actually pokey things that actually, if an animal picks him up, they get poked in the mouth. And hyenas in Africa, when these guys are younger, will use these to chew on, and they can actually break and crush their shell and eat them. The other reason he's dangerous is he's the ultimate party pooper. When he gets picked up by a hyena, they can actually go to the bathroom in the hyena's mouth, and they'll drop him. And so that's a pretty explosive experience for a hyena for sure. And that's another way that they defend themselves. And that's why I named him Hatari, because he's dangerous, not on the front end, but on the back end for sure. Now this tortoise, he can actually grow to be as big around as a 55-gallon trash can. He can live 100 years and weigh 120 pounds. So not the best pet for everybody since they get really, really large. A box turtle is a really good pet for most people. They can actually live into their 80s, and so that might make a little better pet if you have one from a breeder or something like that. But definitely leave them out in the wild so they can do what they need to do, pollinating plants as well as keeping everything in control and being an awesome animal in nature. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been great joining you talking about turtles, tortoises, and terrapins. Oh my! And now, stay tuned for a little message from our wild supporters, and then stay tuned for our very special guest in our Wild Side Chat. We'll see you in just a moment. Let's Go Wild is brought to you by On Air Media, Happy Hawk Property Group, Mr. Longarm. Welcome back to Let's Go Wild, and I'm so excited to have our next special guest with us. We have Viviana Ricardes from Texas Turtles. Hey, Viviana.
Hi, Eric.
Hi, good to see you. Who'd you bring with us today?
Sure, I brought, let me get this little feisty
Oh,
guy.
yeah, I'm ready. Oh, this is awesome.
A juvenile alligator snapping turtle.
That is an alligator snapping turtle. So many people, anytime I show our turtles, tortoises, or terrapins, they always say, alligator snapping turtle. They always think that's what it is, but this is the real deal right here. So yeah, I'm glad you brought him. So tell us a little bit about, before we talk a lot about the alligator snapping turtle, tell us a little bit about Texas Turtles, what service you provide, how you help the public, and how you help turtles around Texas and beyond.
Sure, we are a conservation nonprofit organization dedicated to filling a Texas-sized hole in our knowledge of Texas's turtles.
That's awesome, yeah, and we need it because these guys and their cousins are very misunderstood and misrepresented a lot of times. So it's great that you all are doing that, and I really appreciate the efforts you guys put into taking care of turtles and tortoises and terrapins around Texas and beyond for sure. So tell us a little bit about the alligator snapping turtle. What is so important about them? What role do they play in nature? Tell us some of their characteristics so people understand them a little better.
Sure, the alligator snapping turtle is the largest freshwater turtle in the Western Hemisphere.
Wow.
They get very large.
Yeah, we've got a shell even over here by us.
That's an adult size of a regular sized adult, maybe even a smaller sized adult.
Yeah,
They
so
get very
do
big.
Get pretty big. And they can weigh into the 100+ pounds, right?
211 is the new Texas record.
That's the new record.
Caught and researched by some researchers here in Texas.
All right.
And they can get, upwards of 250.
Absolutely. And so a lot of times these guys, I have people tell me when they see a turtle near water that it's always an alligator snapping turtle, and that's not true. Harry is showing off some of that aggressiveness, I guess you could say, or pugnaciousness is what I like to say. But what we can talk about is kind of the differences, how they look compared to other turtles, so people understand, because we actually have a common snapping turtle shell here, or a skull rather, a common snapping turtle skull here, and this is an alligator snapping turtle skull, so a very large specimen there, and here's the real deal. So let's talk a little bit about how you can tell.
Sure. So alligator snapping turtles are a lot more elusive than your common snapping turtles. You likely won't come across them as easily crossing the road. They rarely come out.
Yeah, they're usually underwater
They stay underwater.
Often, right?
They use that little nose and stretch their nose out all the way to get a little breath of air.
Absolutely.
And then go back under.
Yeah.
But they have these really distinct, these 3 ridges.
Very prehistoric looking.
Very sharp looking, very prehistoric looking.
Yep.
And that's kind of one of the big indicators. Some common snappers have a little bit of a ridge.
Yes.
But these guys really have these pronounced ridges. They also have what we call super marginals.
Okay.
And you can probably see it better on the shell. And it's a double row of scutes along the edge of the
Right.
shell.
And in other episodes, we talked about reptiles having scutes. So it's their scales. And on this can be the side scales, the top scales of the carapace and the plastron, which is the top and the bottom shell. And so, yeah, good. So that's a good way to identify it. The common snapping turtle is a little bit more smooth, but it will have a little raised ridge on its back,
Right.
correct?
Not as pronounced as these guys. These guys also have a much larger head, as you can tell from the big skull, and a much boxier, thicker head, a shorter neck.
Right.
And a lot pointier. You can kind of see how pointy this head is
Absolutely.
compared to the common snapping turtle.
Yes.
They
A little
also
more
are
rounded off.
the only turtle with a lure as a tongue.
I was hoping you were going to talk about that.
So they've got this little, sorry, let me get you over here.
That's
This
all right.
little pink lure
Yep.
at the base where it looks like where their tongue would be.
Right at the ridge of his
Yeah.
bottom jaw there. You can kind of see it looks like an earthworm a little bit. And they're called caudal lures, right?
Lingual
Lingual
lures.
lures, okay.
Lingual
Sometimes
lures.
there's caudal lures, and then, okay, for these guys, that makes sense since it's in the mouth. So lingual lure. So a fish comes by, thinks that it's an earthworm or some kind of swimming worm, and goes in there, and bam! He
And it
grabs him
chops
with
and
that.
it's got a meal.
Yeah, and they don't have teeth. They just have this beak, right? So they're able to crush down on it, and then they swallow their food pretty much whole.
Yep. Couple chomps and it's down.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, they do have a long tail.
They got a very long tail, and they have a cloaca, just like
Other reptiles.
other reptiles
Yep.
and turtles and tortoises. One measurement that we take when we're studying them is a pre-cloaca and a post-cloaca.
Okay.
And that's kind of how we also positively sex a male or a female.
Okay.
It takes a
they
long
don't,
time.
They don't come out blue or pink, right?
Correct. You're right.
I usually tell people that's how you know. But no, you do have some scientific ways and medical ways to figure that out. Now, let's talk about that. So Texas Turtles is pretty instrumental in doing some research projects and helping the alligator snapping turtle. So tell us about what y'all are doing currently with
Sure.
that.
One area that we work with is alligator snapping turtles doing what's called long-term population monitoring studies, where we have a designated study site, and ourselves and other biologists, volunteers, people across the state come out, help us capture alligator snapping turtles. We
Great.
take a series of measurements where we measure the shell height, measure the head,
Nice.
take a whole array of measurements. They're given a pit tag
That's
or
what I
a
was going to ask. Are you
microchip.
tagging them now? Because we have a lot of technology being used
Yes.
for these guys now.
I actually have microchips.
Do you?
Do you want me to go grab one?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
We'll show one here, I guess, in our other footage that you brought it up. We'll put it on so everybody can see what that looks like. That's awesome. But yeah, so you are microchipping them.
So
or,
they
or
get
pit
they get a
tagging.
microchip, and the microchip has an ID number.
Okay.
So every time we recapture that turtle, we know that's turtle number 20 or
right.
25.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, really great that you're able to do that, because it's hard to find these guys probably a lot of times, and they do move around a little bit. They're
Right.
not real.
They're not huge
migratory
movers. Correct.
or good movers, but they do kind of stay in an area that they are happy with, right? And they don't come out very often other than to breed, typically, right?
The females will come out to lay nests.
Okay.
They do a little bit of basking, but
Okay.
it's pretty, not a lot of people see it.
Yeah.
But we have seen them basking, have daytime activity,
Nice.
that sort of thing. So they do move around, and they do also eat a lot of other vegetation.
Oh, really?
People
So
don't realize
not so
they eat a
much
lot of
just
seeds,
carnivorous.
not just carnivorous. They eat a lot of seeds, pecans, walnuts.
That's great to know. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, and so also all turtles are really good at seed dispersal.
Oh, sure.
So they'll disperse just like birds. We know birds spread seeds from one area to another.
Right.
Turtles do a great job
Well,
of
that's
doing
one of the
that
questions
as
I had
well.
is, just what is some of their role there? And so it's not just being a balancer of the ecosystem in a pond or a lake. It's actually spreading seeds as well, giving us trees, which gives us oxygen. So again, it's all connected in that circle of life we've talked about again. So cool. So in this project, are there ways that people can help you all out as far as volunteering or any kind of surveying they can do, or what's out there?
Sure, we do have some volunteer opportunities. They can be limited. We do have, certain group size cutoffs, but all that information can be found on our website, texasturtles.org.
Yeah, I was going to ask it. So the best thing to do is definitely go to texasturtles.org to find out more about that. So let's talk a little bit. You've worked a long time with animals. So what's your fondest memory of working with, whether it be alligator, snapping turtles, turtles in general, or reptiles, since that's kind of your background?
Sure. I've really liked all reptiles since I was really little.
Really?
As many of us
Me
do
too,
get
yeah.
excited about it when we're really little.
Absolutely.
Working with alligator snappers has been a real high point. I never thought I would be working with them and getting to see 100 and 120
Because how often do you really see them, right?
It's a rare thing for most people to get to experience a natural
Well,
wild
you and Carl, and I'll mention Carl Franklin. He's involved with Texas Turtles as well, a longtime friend of mine, and worked at the Dallas Zoo for a time and helped us out with Wildlife on the Move when he was Carl's Creepy Crawlies. So you and Carl had a special guest that's kind of famous out there that those of you know about, Coyote Peterson.
We did.
So tell us a little bit about that experience with Coyote and what he was doing, because I've seen a little bit of that episode.
Sure, we did a couple episodes with Coyote Peterson. We did a long Animal Planet version, and then we've done a couple smaller segments on his YouTube channel.
Awesome, yeah.
Where we talk about the measuring alligator snapping turtles in our research.
Yeah, and he's braver than I know his show is Brave Wilderness. I am not going to stick my finger over there, even if you gave me a lot of money to do so, because I know that thing's going to snap. I'm sorry, I'm the wimpy guy. I like to keep myself safe. That's just how I've always done it with animals, but I'm glad he does that, so you all will know that they are pretty powerful and strong. So definitely something to keep your fingers out of if you don't want to have that experience. So, hey, let's ask you this question, my favorite question of all. So if you, Viviana, could be any animal at all, what animal would it be and why?
Sure. I'm a three-toed box turtle.
Oh.
A very common, very nice. Native to here in North America.
And I'm glad you
mentioned
that, because earlier in the episode, we showed a three-toed box turtle. So
that's one of my lifelong childhood favorites.
Yeah.
And
so what is it about the box turtle you love so much?
They have a very small home range.
Okay.
Kind of like me. I like being close to home and coming back and moving to where I
But having your
originally
space as well?
Oh, yeah. I like to travel, and they move around a lot. They do travel and adventure, but they always kind of want to come back home.
Absolutely.
So I'm very much relate to a three-toed box
That's great.
turtle.
That's a good one. I'm glad you brought that up. Well, another question I like to ask, since you're a professional woman working in a field with animals and doing this research and conservation and really taking care of alligator snapping turtles, what advice would you have for girls that are interested in doing what you're doing, or anybody for that matter, so that they can make a difference in the world for our animals that are kind of misunderstood and misrepresented? What would you tell them?
Absolutely. There's a lot of things you can do just from being a basic advocate for turtles and our wildlife and our nature. And, a lot of their habitat is disappearing, as we've heard from everyone. From volunteering, getting involved, learning, finding mentors. You can really, if you're really passionate and want to work with animals and want to do something, there's definitely ways. And like I said, mostly getting involved, volunteering, getting to know lots of people, reaching out to people that want to take you under their wing and help teach you, learning as much as you can from books.
Yeah, I always tell everybody to go wild for reading.
Yeah,
I'm sure you do a lot of that.
I love being in a bookstore as a kid, learning about turtles, because back before there was an internet,
yes.
I had lots of books that I would look at and learn about turtles.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's possible. It's not easy.
Right.
It's definitely not easy.
Yeah, so you're out in the field a lot. So, I mean, I'm sure you're going through lots of different terrain and lots of vegetation and thick things and mosquitoes and everything else, right? So it's not the most glamorous.
Not
out
right.
in that role.
Not always.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to put in a lot of work.
Yeah.
And just because someone doesn't look like you doesn't mean you can't do it. There's a lot of people that think, oh, well, that's not for me. I don't know if I would fit into that. Well, it's possible.
It's
you
possible.
Can. It
Right.
takes a long time.
Absolutely.
But finding a good group of inclusive people and people that are wanting to help teach you is really key.
That sounds great. And that's what I always tell people is, find good mentors, find good programs that you can volunteer with and learn from and get that experience. Because again, it's not always paid either,
Oh,
right?
no, yeah.
So for like your example, you guys, Texas Turtles, like Wildlife on the Move, are nonprofit.
Correct.
And so I know you guys are volunteering, but looking for ways to build your following, as well as maybe getting support out there from corporations or
Right,
people that are wanting
absolutely.
to help the alligator snapping turtles. So tell people then, what can they do to help Texas Turtles? Where can they find you? How can they support you? And I know you got some crazy cool stickers that have just been launched, so I
Yes.
know about that. So tell us a little bit about how our viewers can be a wild child and make a difference for Texas Turtles as well as alligator snapping turtles.
Sure. Our website is texasturtles.org.
There you go.
can find us on Facebook, a Facebook group called Texas Turtles that we manage, and we put a lot of information and stories and news and
Absolutely.
stories about our research, our outcomes. Also on Instagram, TexasTurtles.org, and Twitter. We are very donation driven.
Yes.
A lot of private donations and landowners that really, really help get this work accomplished and get this work done. And it's really, really cool seeing all the people that have come together
Definitely.
to help.
And it does
support
take a
and
lot of
look for
people to
turtles.
do that.
Yeah.
And we need your support out there. Well, is there anything else you want to share about the alligator snapping turtle or turtles in general that we might not have covered?
Sure, they're actually the most endangered group of vertebrates. And so I think a lot of people don't
Don't know that.
realize that. They think that they're so common, and we're very lucky in Texas that we have
So many.
lots of different
Yeah.
species and so many
And
turtles.
a lot of people forget about sea turtles even out
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah.
So they kind of get misrepresented as well, or not even noticed or recognized. So, okay, good.
So they're the most endangered group of birds, and they're very important. They're very critical in our ecosystem.
Absolutely.
They have a high biomass, like I said, seed dispersal, and they're almost even they're a cleanup crew for our
Definitely
rivers
that.
and ponds, and so they eat dead, decaying matter, and just play a really, really important role.
And on top of that, I always tell people what we forget about is, do they provide food sources for other animals?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so they are
Absolutely.
also a link in that chain. So there are other animals that are predators that eat turtles. And so it's important to keep them in that loop. Well, I love alligator snapping turtles, and I could stay with you all day. We probably could talk for another several minutes for sure. But I really appreciate you joining us today. And thank you to Texas Turtles for all that you do. And we just want to encourage you out there to definitely help out Texas Turtles by checking out some information that's coming up here next. And we appreciate you joining us for Let's Go Wild. Thanks for joining us today. And from all of us at Wildlife on the Move, let's go wild again sometime. But in the meantime, be a wild child and make a difference for our animal ambassadors like Riddlin and Mystery, my special guests, and our world. We'll see you soon. Be a wild child and support Texas Turtles by visiting their website at www.texasturtles.org and join their Facebook group at Texas Turtles. Donate to our animal care fund at mygivingcircle.org/charity/wildlife on the move. Check out our website and book our programming at www.wildlifeonthemove.com. Follow us on Facebook at Live Animal Shows. Follow us on Twitter at MrB_WOTM. Follow us on Instagram at eric.wildlifeonthemove. And check out our YouTube channel and subscribe to this very program at Let's Go Wild. Subscribe to Patreon for monthly animal adventure videos at patreon.com/animaladventures.